So I am utterly delighted today to be introducing everybody to Kevin Leivers, who is the founder of a very, very interesting supplement maker and sort of online community. And he's going to be coming in and talking to us about all things supplements, because this is an area of our health and well-being that a lot of people don't know very much about, but spend an absolute fortune on. So I've got Kevin in today to help us begin to unpack some of what we need to know before we spend a fortune on some supplement regime that we don't even know how it might help us. So, Kevin, first of all, tell us a little bit about you and your background so we know how your knowledge kind of holds this space really well.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Leivers, founder of the Naked Pharmacy, the first online pharmacy that is totally natural. I founded it in 2016 because I felt that people were missing a hub, a place for information and sharing, education, training, support in terms of advice. Way back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, all pharmacies were completely natural. There weren't any synthetic remedies. My first job was at Boots Pharmaceuticals, and Boots Pharmacy was a herbalist. Way back, when Jesse Boots founded it in Nottingham, where I'm from. It was a herbalist, and I just felt that a lot of people were swirling around this universe. It was getting bigger and bigger. I mean, if you look at the number of supplements out there now on Amazon, it's just crazy. And I think that people needed to be empowered with information so that they can make an informed decision. I think that's really important to me at my heart. I've been in this industry, for the healthcare industry, for 40 years, over 40 years now, nearly 60. So that explains why it spans so far back. My first job was working for the chemist that discovered ibuprofen. So I was in pure drug discovery way back in 1982. In Nottingham, and that was quite an interesting insight for me into the way drugs are formulated right from source. So pharmaceutical drugs. I did my pharmacy degree, went into retail pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, had a year in each, and then went back into industry with Upjohn, making a lot of pain-killing drugs. And so saw the manufacturing quality side of that. That was quite interesting. I was overseas, came back to UK, and the first industry job I saw was with a Swiss herbal company called Weleda. And
yes, a big fan of
yes,
Weleda.
yeah. So I was their chief pharmacist for 11 years, left in 2004 because I just felt as if there was something in me that I needed to be expressed, and I was getting a little bit too much people management, not enough kind of innovation. And I'm a research and development pharmacist at heart. And then I set up a research and development consultancy for about 16 years, and we did huge projects around the world, things like researching beetroot for blood pressure, broccoli for acne. So some really interesting,
Broccoli
research.
for acne? I've not heard
Yes,
of that.
we can dig into that one later. That's a really fascinating sort of 4-year project that I was at the heart of. And then it just opened my eyes to actually how foods at high strengths, certain foods at high strengths that are processed in a certain way, concentrated, could act like drugs, but without the side effects. So that really, for me as a pharmacist, was like, wow, that's amazing. Yes, food and nutrition really important, but actually at a higher dose, certain ingredients like saffron, for instance, perform like a drug in multiple ways. So I call it that sort of rainbow or waterfall effect, where it's acting on multiple systems at one time. So I felt that that was a much more balanced approach, and maybe that's the reason why they're a lot better tolerated. So the side effect profiles are much better. And actually, from an environmental point of view, sometimes, when I was in the research department at Boots, I mean, we were doing research, and I remember standing in front of a fume cupboard with a visor breathing apparatus, a cylinder of phosgene, which is a poisonous gas used in the First World War, I think, bubbling it through this reaction vessel, and thinking, my God, people are possibly taking this drug. And I think what's evolved over time is part of my journey, my health journey, my life journey, my career journey. It's all kind of molded into one. And it's actually that awareness of what's the risk and what's the benefit. And if you actually explain that to people, then they can make an informed decision about their conventional medication as well as their natural medication or supplements. And so the pharmacy element to me, from the naked pharmacy, is the science, the education, the discipline. That's really important. The way that we test things, the way that we research things, and the pharmacy service. So we have 5 pharmacists here at the registered pharmacy here in Guildford, and we do a lot of free advice over the phone, over email, literally thousands a week. And it's and the naked side is the natural transparency, approachable. It's that purity again. It's that, and actually, I was thinking, well, why, if we can try to redress this balance, because we're totally dominated by pharmaceuticals at the moment, and get the best balance between what's the best in terms of risk and opportunity or benefit, and the right balance between supplementation, between diet and exercise, and all the lifestyle and coaching work that you do, then it's all kind of blends into one, because then it gives people the better chance to be healthy. And I think I used to see it in retail pharmacy, these people coming in for more and more prescriptions.
Yeah.
And you can see that where the second prescription is because of the side effect from the first prescription, and then it goes on. And before you realize it, these people are coming in with 5 pages of scripts, 4 items, 5 items per script.
Yeah.
I think that I was listening to the interview with Kennedy Jr. yesterday in the States, and something 53% of Americans have got chronic illness.
Yeah.
I don't think we're far behind them. And we may be even ahead of them. So I think the way that we're eating, the way that we're drinking, has to change, and that has to come from awareness, education, and training and support as well.
Kevin, what an incredible combination of skill sets and interests that you bring to the table then, because of course, we know that in general, the supplementation market is not regulated in any way, shape or form like the one that is the kind of pharmaceutical market. And yet, actually, wouldn't it be amazing, because so many people are taking things, wouldn't it be amazing to know that what you were taking was not going to harm you, was actually containing substances that weren't to be reacting with your body in a way that wasn't great? So it's just so exciting to know that what you're doing exists, and this whole concept as well of having a place where you can get in touch and go, okay, this is what's going on for me. I take these pharmaceutical medicines. What can I take that will complement that without interfering? And actually, what do I need? What do I actually really need?
Yeah. Less is more. Quality over quantity any day. Yeah. And often as not, we're seeing people with 10 plus supplements that we're actually having to trim them down and say, actually, these 2 or 3 are overlapping, and so much in there that they just don't need. And I did a talk yesterday on Instagram about the impact of zinc on development, and actually amazing stuff that most people, and particularly with ADHD and kids with autism, they tend to be low in zinc and high in copper. And so why that is, we've not fully understood, but obviously it's partly diet. And zinc can repair a lot of that, but if you overdo it, then zinc can have the opposite effect. So if you're taking a multivitamin that's got zinc in it and a zinc supplement on top, or suddenly you're going to reverse the effect. So it's really important to dig into those ingredients and where they're from and how they're made.
Amazing. And actually in this country, because I think people aren't allowed, or manufacturers aren't allowed, to talk about the benefits or the kind of the pros and cons. I'm not sure, because whenever you look at it, let's say I was to buy zinc from my chemist or something, it doesn't say what it will help with, does it? It just says to be used as part of a kind of, nutritionally balanced diet. And that's sort of it. You've got to do your homework elsewhere, haven't you?
You have, yeah, it's really important. And there are probably 4 or 5 ingredients like zinc, like magnesium, that can make a massive difference relatively quickly and relatively cheaply. So it's one of those things, well, actually, once you've got that, why wouldn't you do that? And then some of the other stuff can start falling away because it not make a difference. Or the other thing is, I always say, track what is the symptom? Be focused about what you're treating. So what is the symptom, or it's a range of symptoms you're treating? Sort of make a note, mental diary, and write it down in your notebook on your diary. 1 to 10. So today it's a 9. My average is about 8, and I'm taking this supplement, and suddenly it's dropped to 3.
Yeah.
Then I know it's not a randomized controlled trial, but actually at least it's some way of quantifying if there's an improvement. Now, if you're taking 3 or 4 at one go and you're starting with those 3 or 4, then how are you going to figure out what's doing the work? So build it up one at a time. Simple
Yeah.
stuff, but common sense stuff.
So what I might do is come back to you on what you think of the 5. You've just mentioned 5 that are a really good place to start. But let's just hold that thought, because I want to come into dosage. So one of the things that I've seen time and time again is, on television, where people have done an expose of the kind of supplement industry and taking these really high doses of things, does it really make any difference? So my question to you, let's just start with the standard vitamin C. Let's say someone's got a fairly average diet, and they're getting what they would think probably was quite just about enough. What would be the difference between taking 200 versus 2000? Can the body actually absorb that extra 1800 milligrams? What does it do with it?
It's a really good question, and vitamin C is my pet bugbear, if you like, because when you look into vitamin C in the marketplace and supplements, and if you look at in foods and drinks, it's there on the pack often. Ascorbic acid will be listed as ascorbic acid. 95% plus of supplements and food and drinks have chemically made vitamin C. So if you look at the chemical stages required, the 6 or 7 stages, often requiring solvents and catalysts, and it comes from corn, which could be GM corn.
Okay.
So that's the number one thing, is actually where's it from, how's it made?
Yeah.
Ask the question.
But who, so can I just pause you a second there? Ask
Yes,
the question to who?
so
They don't often put that information on the back of, do they?
you've got to go back to the manufacturer and ask them the uncomfortable question.
Oh,
Where's this ascorbic acid from? Is it synthetic or is it natural? And how was it made? Was it made from corn? Was it made from GM corn? Ask them the direct question. If they start gaslighting you, then you know that you've hit a sore weak spot and go elsewhere. So that's the number one thing. The other thing is that there are legal. So often with chemical processes, you need chemical solvents to dissolve the active ingredients to make the chemical reaction to get to the next stage. And we have a rule that we'll only use water, CO2, because it evaporates off, or ethanol and water, grain ethanol, because that can be evaporated off and removed. Anything else, solvent-wise, we don't entertain at all.
right.
There is a rule in the EU, and it applies to UK as well, where supplements and foods and drinks are allowed a certain level of solvent residue in those products. So say the solvent is toluene, which is a petrochemical, that if you had a bottle of toluene, and I used to use it when I was in the research labs, it would have a cross on the bottle.
Not for human ingestion.
Not for human. And I used very thick gloves because I didn't want it absorbing through my skin. So you've got to find out what's the solvents they used and what's the solvent residue. So on the specification for each of those ingredients, and they have to have this by EU law, it will say the percentage solvent residue. Now, obviously, if you've got, say, the maximum for some ingredients is like 2%. Yeah. And so this is relevant for food and drink as much as a supplement. So I drink decaffeinated coffee, and then I looked into the regulations in Europe on solvents that are allowed to wash the coffee beans or the powder, and I was horrified. And so I double check it's a water sort of washing process only, because I don't mind ethanol and water, that's fine, or I don't think they use CO2. So you've got to think, well, actually, what's behind the supplement? So if I'm taking 2% solvent residue in my supplement, in my food or drink, what's that doing to my gut? What's that doing to my body? And so what's 2%? That's 2 grams in every 100 grams that you're taking, or 2 milligrams in every 100 milligrams that you're consuming. Now, if you're doing that on a daily basis, so this is a skeleton in the cupboard of a lot of companies that are using synthetic vitamin C as well as synthetic anything. So you can get synthetic magnesium. So a lot of the magnesium is out there. So I'll say, oh, yeah, I have magnesium bisglycinate or magnesium glycinate, and I take that and picolinate because it's good for my brain. But actually, what they don't realize is it's not natural, it's synthetic. It's made with synthetic solvents, and there will be a synthetic solvent residue in the finished product because that's permitted. So these are things that I think people, once they know, then they can make informed choice. And then suddenly that 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C, cheap £5 or whatever it is, and I've seen it in shops, versus a, I don't know, 10, £12 natural vitamin C becomes an easier choice.
Yeah.
And so you asked that. So back to the first, the question that you made, which is, what does the body do with that 1,800 milligrams? Well, I mean, there are RDA, something like 80 milligrams, isn't it, for vitamin C? And I call it an acid wash. So why would you want to wash your gut biome with 1,800 milligrams of acid? Because it is, it's a weak acid, but it's still an acid, and it's got probably residues in there as well. So I would argue that it's better to have a natural source. You know, as C in Immune Hero, for instance, got amla fruit, which is Indian gooseberry. It's an Ayurvedic, and it's got lots of micronutrients around it, and it's extracted with alkaline water and then evaporated off. So, you know, people think, oh, I'm going to take, you know, I've got a cold, so I'm going to take 5,000 milligrams. I've seen those fizzy tablets that they put into the drinks, and I think, oh, I'm doing myself a world of good here. But actually, if the immune system, we know it is in the lining of your gut, and you're washing it with acid, you're doing the exact opposite of what you want to do. So I think, you know, again, it's an education thing, and it's kind of like my bugbear that most people out there just don't know what they're consuming. And it's very easy for a food manufacturer to take these cheap ingredients and put it in there because they get a European claim on pack for health.
Right.
So,
Kevin,
sorry.
this is people are going to be at home going through their cupboards going, oh no, I'm going to have to throw it all away and I've spent a fortune.
Well, not necessarily, but I think, you know, if they want to email in or check with us by phone, then we're always happy to advise. They're probably not our supplements, but equally we're happy to that's part of our service.
Sure. Oh, well, that's very good to know, because I don't want people just going to their larder and throwing away all of their supplementation without checking, because it might be good.
Yeah.
But I think let's come back to your top 5, because I'm really interested. And I heard you talk about magnesium glycinate, and I know that we talk a lot about that in our community, because it, for many, not everyone, but for many, and what you've just said may impact that, it helps with sleep.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your top 5, and maybe we start with magnesium glycinate. What is it? Where does it come from?
So magnesium glycinate is a synthetic version of magnesium, and it's there's 2 chemical pathways to get to the magnesium and get to the glycine, and the 2 can then get paired together. So it's actually what's behind that final step to get the magnesium glycinate that's the problem from my perspective as a chemist and a pharmacist. So I think that when we get our magnesium from seawater, and to me it's eco-friendly, it's sustainable. There's lots of macro, micro minerals within that mix because that's what seawater is, and it's really well absorbed. So in terms of comparisons, it's up there in terms of the glycinate, the picolinate. I see tables, and if you've got this type of problem, if you want something that crosses the blood-brain barrier, then it's picolinate.
Say that one again. Picolinate. I've never heard of this.
So there's a table that's doing the rounds on socials and stuff, saying, well, if you've got a problem with your thinking, cognitive function, then choose picolinate because it crosses the blood-brain barrier, which is this barrier that filters out some drugs and supplements. So, and obviously there's a certain solubility that picolinate has that enables it to cross that. I don't doubt that it crosses, but my argument is use a natural source magnesium, because you don't have the solvent residues,
Right.
and actually most of the actions here in the gut. It's not necessarily in the brain.
Right.
You know, it was quite interesting, you know, for me in research chemistry, there was a whole department at Boots that was looking at mental health and depression and mental health conditions. And they would filter out all the trial drugs that didn't cross the blood-brain barrier, including, you know, ones that were supposedly affecting serotonin, the happy hormone. Well, now, actually, we know that most of the serotonin is produced in the gut. So all that research and the theory behind it all was completely irrelevant. So based on one assumption was that everything was happening up here, but it's not. Yeah.
So interesting. So how long ago was that?
In terms of research, that was
Yeah,
when
just
I was at
how far
the.
have we come?
Oh, yeah, that was 1982, 1984.
Okay.
Yeah, so way back. Yeah.
Well, you say way back. I'm 52. That feels like just yesterday.
It feels like a long time ago for me, actually, but yeah.
Okay, so magnesium. Now, it's what's interesting to me is we talk a lot about magnesium, and obviously we've had people kind of recommend magnesium, but also magnesium glycinate. Are they going to be doing the same thing? I'm hearing one is a kind of extraction of the other, but are they going to be doing the same thing? So what would someone come to magnesium for?
Um, if you've got a nervous system that's a bit twitchy,
Yeah, like
and
many
if
of
you've
my
got
gang have.
restless legs, just
Yeah, okay.
can't settle, particularly at night,
Yeah,
magnesium is brilliant. So nerve and muscle function. So
yeah, okay.
it might even be, you know, you've got those facial tics. Sometimes
Yeah,
you're tired, you're kind of
yeah,
muscle in there, and you know that's what they used to use Botox for. That was the original purpose for Botox, was the twitching muscles, and then obviously then they decided it was good for wrinkles. Um, so that's another story. But
yeah,
so anything to do with nerve and muscle function, if you've got tense, tight muscles, if you've got twitchy nervous system, you're not settling, you've got restless legs, brilliant. Take it at night time
yeah.
before bedtime, or you can take it in the morning, depending on what. If you're a sports person or you've got a lot of exercise recovery
Yeah.
is another one. Yeah.
Okay. Was this ever called tissue salts?
Tissue salts was interesting. It was a big thing, you know, sort of 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s, you know, you used to see them. They were tissue salts were a little bit confusing in that they were homeopathics.
Right.
So they were dilutions of the original. So you might have had a magnesium in there, but it might have
Yes.
been a homeopathic potency of magnesium. So let's not, we
Let's
probably
not
don't have enough
distract ourselves.
time to go into homeopathic theory, but actually
Yeah.
from a physiological level, there wouldn't be enough magnesium in there to
For it
do
to
the
think.
work. So you have to have the RDA or the NRV of magnesium to do, you know, to stop your muscles from twitching, stop your legs from getting restless. So,
Oh,
you know, and homeopathic theory is a completely different approach.
got it. Okay. Sorry to take us off piece there for a
That's
moment.
all right. It's
Popped into
okay.
my mind. I think I was recommended as a pregnant woman back in.
That's safe. Yeah.
So yeah, and I remember having magnesium in. So okay, I'm just going to finish on the magnesium question. If people were to say, are we going to take pure magnesium or magnesium glycinate? Which one is better for sleep? What would you say?
Pure magnesium,
Pure.
better absorbed, no solvent residue, and better
Right.
for the environment. So, we call ours marine magnesium, so it's from the
Yeah.
seawater.
Yeah.
But check,
Okay.
ask the question, where's this from? How's it made? What solvent residue is there? What's the percentage solvent residue? And they're gonna start panicking like hell because nobody's ever
Consumers are
asked them that
finding
question.
out.
Where the hell is that question from?
Who
I'm
told them this?
I'm their worst mystery customer, I'm
I
afraid.
love it.
Yeah.
Let's create a revolution.
Absolutely.
We need it, right?
Just be transparent about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered magnesium.
Yeah.
We've talked a bit about vitamin C, but what else sits in your top five?
As zinc.
Okay.
Again, very simple, but the impact is huge. And I hear so much about kids not having the right nutrition, and we talked about that last night in an IGTV. And zinc, just like omegas, is such a big developmental metal, or
Yeah.
call it a mineral, but effectively it's a metal, and it's involved in so many processes. So it's good for the immune system. It generates natural killer T cells, T cells, natural killer cells, and from a developmental nervous system point of view, it's really fundamental, particularly for kids.
Mm.
So we have a product called Immune Hero, and actually the zinc is extracted from things like holy basil, and so we do things very differently. We don't manufacture it synthetically. We'll look at herbs that are high in zinc, and then we'll concentrate them to get the NRV. So that combination is really important. So immune basis, but also development. And I think if you can supplement your kids as well as, obviously there are issues in terms of cognitive function as we get older. So that zinc intake is really important to the older, aging generation, just from a prevention point of view as well as a treatment.
And I'm curious, what would be the dosage of the zinc in a product like your Immune Hero? Like, how much are we taking? Again, because when people are not well, sort of for a long term, like many of my gang, they think if I take a lot,
Yeah.
it's going to be better than taking a little.
Yeah, 4 or 5 milligrams. That's all you
Okay.
need. So please, please, please do not start taking 10, 20, 30, thinking that I'm going to get 3 or 4 times the effect, because actually when you overdose with zinc, it has the opposite effect. It can destabilize the nervous system and start affecting your cognitive function. So, and this often happens when I'm taking the zinc supplement and I'm taking the multi, and probably the multi has got zinc in it,
Plenty.
and some of these formulas have huge doses in there. I mean, maybe I don't know what the rationale is, but I just don't agree with it. I think it's unsafe, and I think if your quality is right, the absorption will be right, and the dose will do its work.
Amazing. This is so interesting, Kevin. I'm so glad I'm talking to you about this, because I'm sitting here knowing myself down in the kitchen. I've got some really high strength zinc because my
Yeah,
immune system has been below par for a while, since last October again, and I've been trying to support myself. We'll come back to that. We're going to do
yeah,
we'll talk about immune support
yeah.
after this, but let me go through what else is on your top five.
So this is where I start going a little bit off piece in terms of straight vitamins and minerals. To be honest, I'm more passionate. I love the vitamin and mineral story. I think they're fascinating how they interact with each other. But actually, I'm more interested in the botanicals because
Yeah.
of the polyphenolic content in particular. I mean, there's lots of different groups of chemicals in in botanics, and I think when you get the dose right with those bioactives, and we have to be very careful here because again, there's a sort of misinterpretation of dose out there. So, I see turmeric doses or equivalent to 50 grams of turmeric or equivalent to 20,000 milligrams of turmeric, or one in X extract or whatever it is. There's lots of kind of smoke and mirrors, as I call it. It's completely confusing and completely irrelevant. It's really down to the bioactives within those ingredients. So the curcuminoids in turmeric.
Yeah.
What's the dose of curcuminoids in turmeric? Do you have one curcuminoid or do you have several? And what are they? So
Okay.
again, I have a philosophy which is the orchestra effect. Actually, if you can formulate to be working on multiple systems at the same time in different ways, then you're going to have a much more profound effect than a single component. So that's how the drug industry worked, because the whole licensing system for drugs is based on one active. So whether it's ibuprofen, as I grew up with working with aspirin, whatever it is, statin, one component, one chemical constituent, and that the licensing system makes it easier for one component. It does not allow multiple component to be licensed very easily. And that's why you never see generally more than one component. Sometimes you might see two, rarely. But so that's what I love about botanics. And so saffron, for instance, if you look at the range of polyphenolics, these compounds in there that act like a very gentle fire blanket on a nervous system out of control. Then you've got three in there. Then they're carotenoids. They're compounds that are similar structure to a carrot, carotene in carrots. But they're all very different and they're all working in different ways. So you've got crocin, you've got picocrocin, you've got safranal. So when you formulate, it's really important to find an extract and a process of extraction. And we use water for our saffron because it's very gentle and obviously, it's very delicate stamen. I don't know.
You're not going to harm the stamens.
No, so these are saffron stamens, and obviously they're still handpicked. 2 weeks of the year, generally in winter. So this is a flower that loves stressful situations. It's almost telling us what it's good for, right?
I'm good at this. I'll handle this with you.
I can handle the cold, the dark, and
yeah,
whatever rain, whatever, and actually, the more stressful the conditions, environmental conditions, the higher the bioactive levels.
Oh, that's
So when I was at Willeda, we used to have a anti-inflammatory product based on arnica, which is an alpine flower, and we used to import ours from the Black Isle in Scotland because it was high above sea level, and we knew that the bioactives in there were high. And then when we tried to grow it in the Organic Plus gardens in Derbyshire,
too nice.
raised bed, nothing, absolutely no active in there whatsoever. So we basically, it's an experiment, but it just shows you the impact of climate on the bioactives. So
let me just pause you for a second, because we've gone from curcumin and into saffron, and as far as I'm aware, they both do similar things. They're both great at reducing inflammation. Is that right?
I think they're actually very different. They're both. I think it's right in the sense that they're both reduce inflammation, but I think the nuance with turmeric and the curcuminoids is really much more about the raw inflammation you get within your joints, or if you've got actually any inflammation in your gut. So washing your gut with a good curcuminoid blend is really good for your gut lining. Particularly one that's perhaps if you've got leaky gut and you've got a bit of inflammation in there.
So can I just pause for a moment, because we talk about this one quite a lot, because with conditions like post-viral, chronic fatigue, long COVID, all of those things, a lot of people get incredible amounts of inflammation in their joints that wasn't there before.
Yes.
And we talk about finding curcumin as something for them to experiment with, rather than just having a dependency on Nurofen. And am I right in saying that having something like black pepper helps it absorb into the system, or is that a myth?
It's not a myth. It's totally true. So there's two ways of doing the transfer over the cell lining of the cell wall. One is black pepper. The piperine within the black pepper is really important. Dose of piperine, you see some reports again, you see it on the internet all the time. Oh, black pepper is really harmful for the liver. But actually, if you're taking huge amounts of it, yes, it will be harmful for the liver. But if you're taking the right dose of it, based on safety data, then it's perfectly fine. And actually, I call it this taxi driver, because it attaches itself to the curcuminoid molecules, and then it drives it across the cell wall, and then it releases it. And it's a really clever way of doing it. So, and actually, the piperine in the black pepper is also a painkiller. So you get a double whammy. Not only so nature's incredible, isn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's also important to note there are other curcuminoids other than curcumin. So if they've just extracted one curcuminoid, the curcumin, that's the main one. Fine, but actually, ideally you want a range.
An orchestra.
You want an orchestra, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, this is great. Okay, that's good to know. And if someone was looking at, let's say they've got a product and it's their curcumin and they bought it because it's got the black pepper, and in our chat they heard that this was going to help. What should it say on the back if it's got more than one curcuminoid? What would
it'll say a range of X number of curcuminoids, and specify the percentage of the total quantity that is the concentration. So sometimes they'll quote it as a percentage, sometimes they'll quote it as a weight, sometimes they'll quote it as both on the back of the pack. So, and if you want any help interpreting how to interpret labels, again, we're quite good at that. So,
Yeah, great.
so 700 milligrams is a sort of magic level of curcuminoids, whether it's curcumin or curcuminoids, 700 milligram. So, if you've got, I don't know, 50% of 1,000 milligrams, then that's 500 milligrams. So that's how it'll be quoted. It's 1,000 milligrams for 2 capsules, and it's a 50% strength. Then it's 500 milligrams. So that's below the threshold you need for a proper anti-inflammatory effect. So, so I like to visualize a window, this kind of 2 lines.
Yeah.
And this is the therapeutic window, above which it works, below which it doesn't work.
Got it.
Above the top line, it starts to become toxic.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go above the top line. You want to stay between the 2 lines. And so 700 is that line, that lower line for curcuminoids.
Oh, this is so valuable. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so let's jump back now to saffron, because I'm going to admit here, I only heard about saffron and the benefits from you at dinner that night when we met.
Yes.
No one else had talked to me about saffron other than how to put it in your Spanish cooking. So talk to me about the benefits.
So many benefits. I think the number one thing for me was the fact that it lifted mood, it calmed down nervousness, so anxiety, and it helped with sleep. But then when I started getting into more research on it, it was good for ADHD, kids with autism. Some of the impacts we've seen, some of our clients, amazing. And actually that's backed up by proper randomized controlled trials. So these are trials that we always talk about in the pharmaceutical industry. There are trials for botanics as well that are good quality and a good standard. And so it's really fast acting, it's really gentle, and it doesn't interact with anything else. So it's one of those kind of perfect supplements. So if you've got issues where I don't know, you wake up in the morning feeling a bit low, you're lacking in a bit of energy, you're feeling nervous or anxious, perhaps more than normal, and you just don't feel settled, then saffron is one of those mainstays. And I've been taking it as our first product at Naked Pharmacy, and I've been taking it for well, goodness me, 7 or 8 years now. So, and I just titrate the dose. So sometimes I might go off and during the summer I find I can come off for a couple of months. And then, if work gets a bit stressful, then I might go 1 or 2. Sometimes it's really stressful, I might go 3 or 4, but then drop back down again. So
what I'm hearing is that it has a much bigger window of tolerance than some of the other things that you've been talking about.
Massively, yeah, massively.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really useful. We've got a kids version as well, because that's really important to me. I think childhood anxiety is on the rise, and I think if we can nip it in the bud, then the issue is in childhood, and most mental health conditions start in childhood. They snowball, and if you can nip them in the bud at that early stage, where the child feels if they're on top of it, then it doesn't snowball to the issues of depression and so on and so on. And I think there are so many of our generation. I started getting anxiety at university, and I I didn't even know what it was at the time. And
didn't really talk about it, did we?
My dad just said, "Oh, keep a cool head, son," and it sort of soldier on, isn't it, really? And that probably works for a while, but actually if the physiology is driving this, then you've got to sort this physiology out. And I think part of my journey is figuring out through trial and error really what works and what doesn't work. And I think everybody's supplement journey is the same to a certain extent, is figuring out what works for them, what combination.
Well, I think, from my own personal experience, you have to get to the point where you realize what's going on might be something that could be helped or supported. So, I spent my life as an undiagnosed with ADHD woman until the age of 49, and suddenly went, oh, okay.
Now it makes sense. Yeah.
So I have gone on a journey of exploring, well, what might support that. And, I've recently explored ashwagandha, which has been phenomenal, but I'm also taking your product, Ashwadisiac, which I think has got saffron in it, right?
It has, yeah, really high strength saffron, yeah, yeah.
And I'm getting things done that I have never
Wow.
done in my life. I am the most efficient I've ever been with low stimulation tasks. And I think I would put that as a caveat because actually I have hyperfocused ADHD. So anything that's stimulating for me, I'll do it for hours.
Yeah,
Like my work really stimulating.
yeah.
But, move the step ladders from the hallway back out to the garden. That would maybe take me 2 months sometimes because I just stop noticing. My brain doesn't want to engage in things that aren't stimulating. My house has never been more in order.
Wow, wow.
My jewelry box has never existed as a jewelry box with things hanging in it. And, I've
Wow.
been amazing myself.
That's interesting. You've noticed these subtle changes.
Yeah,
That's
really.
amazing to hear. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredibly powerful combination. Ashwagandha, ginkgo biloba, obviously got saffronel, and fenugreek as well, because we forget about the impact of hormones. Fenugreek increases testosterone, which is equally important to women as it is to men
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
get older. So yeah.
Okay. So saffron, folks, if you're watching this and thinking, oh, that's an interesting one to experiment with, you'll get stuff done.
Yeah, yeah, saffron. And I take the calm version. There is an energy version which has got iodine in there from seaweed. So if you're getting up in the morning and you're a little bit edgy, then calm. If you get up in the morning and you're feeling a little bit low, but haven't got the energy, then the saffron energy is the one to go for.
So I know we haven't quite finished your top five, but actually I want to dig into my community and their needs. So obviously one of the most commonly experienced symptoms with chronic fatigue, long COVID, ME, all of those things, is that absolute debilitating lack of energy at
Mhm.
times. And for some people it's constant, and for some people it comes and goes. And it's a bit of a minefield because you can't make plans, you can't know how you're going to feel from day to day, and it's really, really terrifying, actually. So if someone is coming to you and going, right, I've got an inflammatory response going on in my body, it's showing up as, long COVID, chronic fatigue, etc. What would your go-to kind of, okay, start with these basics? What would they be, do you think? Let's also
Um,
add in some symptoms to, some really common ones. So hormonal disruption, I've got, I would say 70-80% of my gang are women with disrupted hormone kind of
yeah.
in their symptom set. We've got insomnia for pretty much anyone, male or female. We've got increased anxiety because the nervous system is dysregulated, and then a host of other bits and pieces which can get quite specific with people. But let's just look at those as a core. What would you say naturally could be supporting these people?
I would start with the easy wins to start off with, and ones that are really cost effective, because we're very conscious that from people's budgets are tighter these days, and so that's where marine magnesium is brilliant, because it's such a quick win as well, and it's relatively cheap to take. So I would start that straight away, and then just have a quick review after the first few days just to see how they're getting on. But I want to know straight away what was going on with their digestion.
Yeah.
So I think our digestion, our gut is a seat of our emotions, and I think I think a lot of people will have kind of shut down emotions as part of their condition,
Of course.
part of a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
So, and that has an impact on the gut motility, on the microbiome, and so I'd want to know, how is your digestion? Are you getting excess acid? Do you feel as if you're not absorbing? So I want to sort of know that, because probably my next port of call would be broad spectrum probiotic,
Yeah.
and we have one with called Gut Love, which has slippery elm in it, and
Okay.
it's in there. Slippery elm is a brilliant. It's very fine, gentle powder, but it's a what we call a mucilage. So it's a natural plant component that sort of gels up a little bit when you mix it between things, a little bit sticky, but kind of quite gel-like. So when you take it, it lines the gut lining very gently, and it just provides a little bit of protection. So it tends to calm down that gut lining, because that's where a lot of the issues can be stemming from. You might be having sort of leaky gut. There might be some patches of inflammation in there. So actually, before we go in with sort of the big guns, and I call turmeric supplements the big gun because it's quite a powerful supplement. And sometimes actually and we see this with ME patients, is if you go in too hard too quickly, something like turmeric, it just knocks them out. And so you have to take a very gentle approach. So I look for things that have a gentle effect and work very subtly but very effectively. So number one, magnesium. Number two, Gut Love broad spectrum probiotic plus the slippery elm for the gut lining. It also protects the bacteria, the probiotics, from the gut acid, so allows them to come through to the small intestine, which is really important.
Interesting. Right.
And by the way, never to take your Gut Love or your probiotics with hot drinks, because obviously they're still alive.
Right. Okay. So no hot drinks. Look, I'm sure no one has said this out loud before in front of my community, as far as I'm aware, but that makes complete sense. Of course,
you might be paying a lot for an expensive probiotic, but you might be killing them off on the way down with your tea or coffee. So broad spectrum probiotic, I would definitely add the saffron calm or energy in there, because it's so gentle, and those components within the saffron are great rebuilders of broken connections. So, and we know this because there's 2 or 3 papers out on the effect of saffron on macular degeneration. So the nerve endings in the back of the eye that decline as we age, and the improvement that it provoked within the macular cells when taking saffron. So it's a good repair and restore for the nervous system, and that does get hammered, for a number of reasons. The people with long COVID, it's traumatic, and they've gone through a lot of trauma, and it's frustrating, and from a mood or a mental, emotional, you feel as if you're on a losing run, right? So, so I think the saffron calm, absolutely, and then I would just wait. I would wait and watch, observe, track, and then adapt, because I think again, targeted approach, focused approach, rather than this shotgun, I'm going to cover everything with a multi and that's going to be fine. But actually, I think in that respect, multis are quite dangerous. And we never recommend, we get all the time, why aren't you doing a multi? Well, actually, most of those ingredients are a complete waste of time. And if you ask, the irony is that if you went on Amazon and asked them where their ingredients come from and how they're made and what's the solvent, they will not know. They're going to start raiding or actually emailing the supplier and say, can you send me the spec on this? It's a bit scary.
Yeah, it is scary. It is scary. Okay, so that's really, really great advice. Because obviously a lot of people who are watching my content are watching because that is their kind of profile. So now you mentioned let's just recap what you mentioned there. You mentioned the marine magnesium.
Yes.
You mentioned the probiotic.
Gut Love, yes.
And you also mentioned the saffron calm. Okay.
Yes.
Great. Now, are those 3 in your top 5? Otherwise, we can pick back up that conversation.
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And then we talked about the zinc, which is in Immune Hero, which is it's the vitamin C and zinc combination, amla fruit plus the holy basil and the mushrooms for the zinc.
So let's actually dig into that, because so I'm going to treat this as a personal consultation with you, Kevin. Last October, I got another virus, which was pretty hideous, that I think reactivated my Epstein-Barr virus. And, I was all swollen glands and completely sort of on my hands and knees for a while. And then, I came back up and got back on my feet again and caught everything. As soon as one of my kids walked into the house with something, I'd go, oh, because 24 hours later, oh, guess who's also sneezing? So is it possible? So we see language in the marketplace that says boosts immunity. Is it possible to boost your immunity, or should we be thinking about supporting our immune function? The
Uh,
language is
I
interesting.
think supporting and strengthening would be perhaps better ways of putting it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
zinc has been shown to shorten if you've got a viral illness by about flu. I think it was about 2 days. So
Okay.
there's some studies out there that shows that zinc's very effective at doing that. And actually, if you look at the impact and how it's provoking the production of natural killer cells and T cells and all the other immune cells that the body produces, it stimulates that. It's part of its process to do that.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe in that perspective, that is boosting. So
Right. Okay.
a mixture that depends, but I think most people's immune system, particularly this time of year, is suboptimal. So I think you know
Yeah.
that you're prone to
Yeah.
bugs at this time of year, then start preparing a month before with the zinc.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that leads me on to another question, which is around the role of vitamin D in our immune function.
Yeah.
So, last year I had a melanoma removed from my neck, and they said, oh, now you need to be taking vitamin D because you can't go in the sun at all.
Mm.
So, talk to me about vitamin D. We can't get it from our food, can we?
No, it has to be converted. Although there are some like mushrooms, for instance, and algae that has vitamin D. So that's where we're sourcing our vitamin D3 from.
Right.
But the issue is it's a bit like with the saffron is that the amount that you've got to consume uh, to actually get the dose is really difficult. So this is why actually supplements can help, because if you're
Yeah.
extracting and concentrating like that, you can get a unit dose into a capsule. And
Great.
just
Because
to
I
say
hate
that,
mushrooms.
yeah, yeah, my son hates them as well. So it's kind of, I love them, but my son hates them. And I think that's a really important thing to note. There's a reason why we don't make them into tablets. And most tablets, well, all tablets need a binder, filler, flow agent, and they'll be synthetic. So actually, the very fact you're taking a tablet means that you're probably taking quite a lot of synthetic ingredients that will have an impact on your biome. So magnesium stearate is one example. Obviously you've got to compress this tablet and it's got to hold together. So you've got to
Right.
get some glue in there. So and I've yet to see a natural tablet that looks like a tablet and holds together without those synthetic ingredients. So that's the reason why ours are in capsules,
Yeah.
and we use tapioca shells, so food-based shells to without colouring. So if you've
Right.
got a coloured capsule, find out what's in that colour.
Why is it a color? So I'm taking your vitamin D3 with black garlic supplement.
Brilliant, brilliant. Yeah.
And yeah, it looks like some kind of rather unpleasant green mucky powder stuff ground up in a clear capsule. So it's good to hear that that's that's how it should look if you're taking
Oh,
some.
well, the black garlic is. I mean, I haven't got a clove with me actually, but if you've ever seen a clove of black garlic, I mean, it tastes lovely and actually smells quite nice.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant for the gut cleanse. It's also brilliant for the lungs. So heart and lungs, black garlic, because when you convert it from white garlic to black garlic, the chemical composition changes completely, and that's why you don't have that acrid smell and taste within the black garlic. So great for lungs. Tends to be more for bacteria and fungus and molds. Actually, with the black garlic, if you've got a viral component, then the olive leaf ELA is focused on viruses rather than the black garlic. So you may want to think about switching if you think that your issues are viral based
Yeah.
rather than bacterial based. If you've got a secondary infection and you're coughing and you're
Got it.
something in your chest, black garlic, 100%.
Okay.
If you've got virus, so ear, nose, and throat infections tend to be viral. So that's the
Yes.
way of figuring it out, and
Okay.
that's where olive leaf is brilliant.
Okay. Oh, well, I might tweak what I'm taking then,
Yes.
having spoken to you about
Yeah.
this. This is great. That was me just self-diagnosing in a fit of desperation.
That's all right. We always need a bit of help. But I sometimes don't. If I try and self-diagnose, I don't see it all. So you've got to get an outside perspective.
Right, of course. Okay, so this is really good to know. Right, Kevin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold our conversation here because I think, both of us probably need to sit down and drink some water and hydrate. But I do want to pick up with another interview at some point as soon as we can and really dig into the menopause piece because we have so many people who are experimenting and kind of floundering around in the world of HRT. And if you can't take HRT, supplementing and all of that. So that I'm hoping will be our next port of call and we can spend some time doing that.
Love
Okay.
to, love to. Thanks so much. Great conversation. It's whizzed past, long
Hasn't it?
time. This is whizzed by. Yeah.
It's been fantastic. Kevin, if you hold there, I'll just press stop.